What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Between the Fence Posts, where we cover all things related to agriculture and how they impact our local communities here in East Tennessee. We were privileged to have our UT Extension Dean, Dr. Justin Rhinehart, join us on this episode. Many of you are probably familiar with Dr. Rhinehart since he was a beef cattle specialist for UT prior to going into administration. He gives us an idea of where UT Extension is headed under his leadership and how his roots trace back to Jefferson County. But before we get started, I want to take a quick second to remind everyone that the application period for the Tennessee Ag Enhancement Program, otherwise known as TAEP, is coming up very soon. October 1st through the 7th is the application period, and all applications must be submitted online, just like last year. And I'm planning on having some office hours to help out with the application process. If anyone needs assistance there, just give us a call at the office to set up an appointment with me at 865-397-2969. We appreciate you all listening in. Now let's go ahead and dive into this episode. All right, everybody. Well, welcome back to Between the Fence Posts. We have a very special guest on with us today. We have the one and the only Dr. Justin Rhinehart. Doc, how are you doing today?
I am just right. How you doing?
We're good. We're good. So to kick us off here, kind of tell folks, tell them a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you're about and things like that for those that don't know you already.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, Ryan, and just I'll go way back and start then since we're here in Jefferson County. I've got some roots here. I'll start that far back, and then I'll shorten the rest of it. But back in the day, I guess through elementary school, I was born and raised here in Jefferson County. My people are from Jefferson County, Dumpling Valley area out there on Columbia Road, used to be Mount Orb Road. We were talking about that a little bit here before we started, but went to elementary school here, like I said, and just a lot of memories from Jefferson County. So actually, my first introduction to agriculture was my mama and papa lived out there in Dumpling Valley, and raised tobacco, and Papa was at the zinc mines there in town, and Mama worked at Magnavox, and in the afternoons and weekends we farmed cattle and tobacco, and so that was really where it got my blood. I was really close to my dad's dad that we call Papa. My grandmother and granddad lived up from Carson Newman there on J. Bird Hill, or down from J. Bird Hill, so again, roots in Jefferson County. When I was in middle school, we moved to Loudoun County. So most of the 4-H stuff I did, coming through 4-H was in Loudoun County. And went from there, went middle and high school in Loudoun County. Went to UT Knoxville, thought I was going to teach ag like my dad did. Went and student taught, and then figured out I wasn't going to be teaching ag. That wasn't going to be my calling.
Not all it's cracked up to be
exactly.
sometimes.
Yeah, that's I'm very thankful for the people that do, and it's a noble profession. Like I say, my dad did it for years and years, and it's a great thing. I was big in FFA, and thought I wanted to be an FFA advisor. I think my plans and things had changed as came through undergraduate in ag and extension education. So I'd taken a lot of animal science courses, really liked reproductive physiology, deciding to go to graduate school in repro phys. Went to Kentucky, did a master's there, and actually did that master's with an extension specialist. Mm-hmm. And that's when I got the bug for and really understood extension. Like, I'd been exposed to it through 4-H. Had been definitely understood how much that the extension agent here in Jefferson County helped my papa with tobacco production, and coming out and looking for blue mold, and and thinking about aphids, and just when to top, when to sucker, what to use to sucker, when we start being able to spray for it, and all that stuff. So I remember the extension agent here being involved in that, but I didn't really get a full appreciation for cooperative extension as it works across the U.S., and especially in the Mid-South here in Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, all those areas that have that real traditional approach to it, until I got to Kentucky and worked with an extension specialist, and we would go out and work with agents in the counties and help answer questions for the specialist I was working with, specifically for cattle management, and most of it reproductive management, how to apply reproductive technologies, ester synchronization, AI, embryo transfer, ultrasound pregnancy diagnosis. So I really got the bug for wanting to be an extension educator, working with him, doing my master's. then I decided, well, if I'm going to do that and I'm going to be able to explain the science really well to folks, I need to know the science better. So I ended up going to West Virginia University and doing more of a, I guess we call it a basic science, PhD dissertation work in endocrinology mostly, and pregnancy, fetal development, placental development, those kinds of things, and how the endocrinology affects placental development and pregnancy maintenance. Again, just so I could understand the science, so that I could basically what we do in extension is we take information from research that's empirically derived information that we know is sound information, and package that in a way to for farmers, or if it's FCS families, if it's 4-H youth, package it for them to be able to apply it to their lives. And I just love that concept of being able to understand that science and translate it into a way people can use it to make more money, make a better life, whatever the case may be. So it was really, really blessed when I got, just as I was getting done with my dissertation work, that there was a faculty position open at Mississippi State. So I went to work as a beef cattle specialist at Mississippi State for a few years before I had the opportunity to come back to UT. Was a beef cattle specialist here in the animal science department for I think 15 years. And then transitioned into administrative role after that.
I was going to say, when did you start at UT in your specialist role?
2010.
Okay.
April Fool's Day of 2010 was my first day, and we're still trying to figure out who the joke is on.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that. You talked about your dad being an educator, and you knew what extension was, but didn't necessarily understand kind of the ag side of it, the information dispersion, how it is conducted throughout the counties and things like that. It's I'll drop a name here. Ronnie Barron.
Oh yeah.
So I kind of have a similar story, and we were at the Tobacco Beef and More Field Day in Springfield at Highland Rim Research and Education Center, and I was Eric Walker's intern, Dr. Walker, back in the day, and he was. He told me just help out with whatever needs to be helped out, and I was helping out with the meal line. End of the meal. There's probably 25, 30 people left in line getting their steak sandwich, as they always do there at the end of that day. And Mr. Ronnie was standing there, and I know they couldn't all be from Cheatham County. Cheatham County is a small county.
Right.
He knew every single one of them by name, shook their hands, asked them how they were doing. Hey, how's the wife and kids? How's the family doing? How's your mom and dad? Things like that. And it was at that moment I thought, yep, I think this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing like that.
Yeah. And that's the neat thing about cooperative extension. And it's more than 100 years old across the country. And it definitely, started as part of the land grant mission. Each state having a land grant university and cooperative extension tied to that through NIFA now, National Institutes of Food and Agriculture. So we get some federal funding, but mostly state funded. But that concept of having, federal, state, and local buy-in, because all the counties in Tennessee and all the states that still approach it this way, the county governments, help support the local extension budget. And when you have that kind of buy-in at every level, everybody's got skin in the game. There's good decisions made, and it kind of gets back to exactly what you were just talking about. And let me say it this way, we often talk about in Tennessee we have extension in all 95 counties. We're the front door to the University of Tennessee in every county. But I like to take it a little step further. We live in every community with the people in that community. So it's not just that we come in from Knoxville and say, hey, we're here with this information. We're
from the government. We're here to help.
Yeah, exactly. and it's not a kind of a, I don't know, to me that's not a real genuine way to help people, to affect change or to transfer information. We live with and know the people in the communities by name, and we talk on the phone oftentimes. See them at church Sunday morning, see them in the grocery store or whatever, and so we actually feel it, see it, live it, smell it, taste it, the whole thing. We're living in community with the people we serve. And so to me, that's why it's been around that long. It's why it's been effective for so long. And probably, the whole, the series of legislation that instituted the land grant with the Morrell Land Grant Act, the Hatch Act that gives us the research that gives us the information that we take to end users, farmers, families, youth. and then the Smith-Lever Act that the kind of the third arm of that set up extension to deliver that information beyond the campus. Probably the most responsible set of legislation, federal legislation, that includes state and local support. As a matter of fact, I've read an article. It was when I was at Mississippi State, so it would have been the early 2000s. And somebody that knew extension was saying, hey, if we really want to address issues in healthcare, let's look at the way they do this stuff in cooperative extension. I'm definitely not advocating for that now is the way to do that, but it's just such a good model of responsible action, I think, of understanding the need for public action, but doing it in a way that supports private industry, families, and doesn't compete with or displace any of that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, especially in Jefferson County, is still a really big ag county, and people don't really understand there is a certain weight that comes with, and responsibility, I think, is the better word for that. But there's a reverence or a weight that you carry on your shoulders when you are an extension employee, because it's our philosophy is real life solutions, but we provide unbiased research-based information across all program areas. And so people look to us for advice, and people look to us for recommendations, and again, there's a little bit of pressure there when you think about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the good part about it, right? And one of the only reasons I've wanted to, or decided to leave the specialist position working with beef cattle, that was a very hard decision to make. But to me, I think we have an opportunity to keep leveraging that. I remember, when this is dating myself, but when the internet really became very accessible, you kids, I thought you'd laugh at that. But people were worried, especially specifically in extension, like, well, Dr. Google's coming in, or wasn't Google at the time, but the internet's going to displace us because everybody will just be able to find their information. Well, actually, it made us even more relevant, I think, in the long run.
Very much so. Yeah.
We use it to support what we do, and we use those technologies to more efficiently and effectively deliver the education we have. But there's so much on there that's not vetted, by real life science, and I think it actually drives more calls, more interaction with us by people reading so much on the internet, and they don't know if they can trust some person and wherever, Puerto Rico, that came up with whatever, pouring vinegar on something to do whatever, they talk to us. And
if you've worked a year as an extension agent, you've heard all, almost just about. But Maddie can attest to this. If I had a nickel for every time somebody would call and say, well, I did some research on the internet and this is what Google said, or not calling out Google, whatever, this is what the internet says, I'd be a rich man. I could be able to retire. But
I hear doctors say that a lot too, self-diagnosis or internet diagnosis, and it's very similar when you, and the gravity of it, kind of getting back to the point you were making, when somebody comes to ask us a question. And so one thing I left out is I interned, a summer intern when I was doing my undergraduate in Loudoun County with
Philip Morris.
Yep, I was Philip Morris intern, so I was scouting tobacco and just learning what an extension agent does every day. And so in that experience, I saw John Goddard was the agent there, still the agent there. He's the one I interned with. But when somebody came in to ask him a question, sometimes it'd be somebody coming in from a subdivision that had some bug on their flower, and we want to, when we do help them, we answer those questions. That's important. When you take an aggregate commercial or consumer horticulture, it's a huge part of what we serve.
Oh yeah.
But then right behind them, you get a farmer come in and says, hey, I've got blue mold in this crop that I'm depending on for a substantial part of my living for that year. Or if it's I need to know when to plant, and you're just helping people make decisions that affect their livelihood, their prosperity, the condition of their family. That's huge, man.
Oh yeah.
And if we don't do that based on empirically derived information, research-based information, and if we're not serious about vetting that ourselves as an agent, as a specialist, it's it could go off the rails, and none of us take it lightly.
No, and yeah, you lose the respect of one in a small community. You lose the respect of a lot of people,
Yep.
and so that's how quickly it can snowball in the wrong direction.
Right.
Well, let's talk about your new role. I didn't introduce you as the new extension dean for University of Tennessee, but and you've kind of hinted at some of your roles you've had in the past. But you were an extension specialist for Mississippi State. You came to UT, moved back home as the beef cattle repro specialist there in physiology, and then just a few years ago, you were able to become our ag and natural resources dean. And oh gosh, were you a year in?
I was 2 years in.
2 years in,
Yeah.
and you were asked to be the interim extension dean after Dr. Stokes took a new position for her, and now you are the official extension dean.
Right.
So my first question is, what do you miss about your previous role as an extension specialist?
Oh man, everything. I literally miss everything about that job, and I definitely don't regret
Sure.
going into administration, because the way I think about it, I get to help other specialists enjoy their position.
Your impact is
and other
different.
agents.
Yeah,
exactly. So what I miss, definitely working with agents, some of my best friends across the state, and that's another neat thing about the specialist role. Get to work with all the agents across the entire state, and just kind of getting back to what we set up here, talking about how important these roles are as county agent. When I would work with an agent to help them address an issue for a beef cattle farmer, beef cattle producer, get to see that build credibility with their producers. If it's a young agent, really love that, helping young agents get a foothold by them understanding what I had to teach them, and being able to relate it to producers. If it was established agents that encountered a really tricky issue that they hadn't experienced before, those were fun, really fun to work with.
Oh, yeah.
And I get to get some credibility with some of those salty old agents that have been doing it for 30-something years. That was fun to be able to earn their trust, and again, by helping them maintain the trust of the producers that came to them. So I guess I just boil it down to relationships, and I get to keep those relationships still in the same system, still working with the same folks, a little bit different way, or a lot different way. I probably the thing I miss the most is relationships with the beef cattle producers that I'd worked with agents in their counties, and I still, it's a funny story. I get some folks that call me from around the state and around the country, and a couple other countries. Actually, they'll call me from time to time. They're getting ready to do seniorization, trying to figure out if there's any new protocols, or run into an issue with embryo transfer, getting low pregnancy rates or something. They'll call me. The first thing they'll say is like, "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you don't do this anymore." My first reply to that is, please don't ever hesitate to call me.
It's a break from the other work I have to do.
If it's somebody in Tennessee, I always try to bring Salo, Dr. Zoka, the fellow that took my old position, and bring him in on the discussion too, just so they can get to know him and kind of transfer that relationship over. But I'm kind of greedy about folks that call me from other states and other countries.
I understand.
I keep them to myself and try to work with them.
Rightfully so. I get it. I get it. Well, and I figure that would probably be your answer, is relationships, and ultimately that's what we function on in extension. Like you said, at the local level, state level, and on, it's all about relationships.
Definitely.
So, yeah. What's the most challenging part about your new role as the head cheese of extension here in Tennessee?
Yeah. I guess to put one word on, it's budget.
Amen to that.
Yeah, and I think any kind of leadership role in extension that has a budgetary component to it, it's something we think about a lot. We're in really good shape in Tennessee, and kudos to our county commissions and ag boards across the state. I mean, if it weren't for them, there's no way we could function like we do. And I'm not going to call out any other states, but there are other states, especially if they've gone away from an agent county-based model.
System. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some places that go regional, they lose that connection, with the county commissions. And I'm not saying it's, not giving us credit for, for what the commissions do. I'm just saying that we've been able to maintain those relationships by serving at that level it was established at originally. But the real kudos go to the counties, the county governments across the state that have remained committed to us, and us committed to them. that to me is makes it less difficult than it could be, because that adds up to our total budget's really big in extension across the state. Our state legislature funds about half of it, half of that total. Some of it's through grants and contracts that we work, a little bit of fee-based. We do some things that we try not to charge a lot for everything we do, but we do some fee-based programming when it's warranted. But the state and local contribution makes it a lot less difficult than it could be. But if it weren't for Missy Kiss, our budget manager for extension, I call her Grand Poobah of the budget, or budget czar, whatever. She needs a better title than she has, but rely on her a lot because she understands it, and she's been doing it for a long time. Matter of fact, well, I won't tell on her that way. She's been doing it for a good bit and has a good experience in it, and rely on her a lot. So, but the budget's probably the thing that if anything would keep me awake, that would be it.
Yeah. So. My dad, we were talking before we got on air here. It was he was principal for almost 20 years back home in Middle Tennessee for a middle school. Mm-hmm. And I asked him when I started to do the interim county director stuff, and I said, okay, you got any advice for any kind of leadership, management type role? He said, 2 things you got to worry about. I said, well, I'm all ears. If you just got 2, that's good. He said, well, it's 2, but it could become a lot more. Number 1's budget. Number 2's personnel. Mm-hmm. You take care of those 2 things, your life's pretty easy. And I was like, that's pretty good advice. But so just
not easy.
Yeah, not easy.
To do, but
yeah. Easier said than done, Pops. But so anyway, I know you've already been asked this a little bit. I know in the interview process, of course, you're asked this a lot. But just tell the folks out there, what's your vision? Because I think you have a very grassroots story. You came up in 4-H. You've been involved with extension in some shape, form, or fashion your whole entire life, literally. What's your vision for extension over the next, under your leadership? I'll just say that. What's your vision for us?
No, I appreciate that question. Of course, like you say, I when I interviewed for this position, had the opportunity to address it. I've thought a lot about it ever since. But I became a specialist at Mississippi State of what should it look like as a system? Mm-hmm. How do we keep this going with the impact that we've had? The thing I haven't gotten 100% great at is trying to figure out how to explain this concept of staying true to our fundamental principles, but still advancing with technology. Mm-hmm. A lot of things just in society in general, everything's either, it's got to be one way or the other, mm-hmm. Black or white. There's no gray. There's no room to kind of, hold these tensions in different ways. Try to think about how to explain this without getting, I guess, too spiritual or whatever.
I know where you're going.
But this tension,
mm-hmm.
and we can't live grace and truth perfectly, but we ought to try, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there's only one person that's ever lived a perfect balance of grace and truth, but we're supposed to model after that. So I kind of take that concept of being able to own that tension between 2 opposing kind of concepts, mm-hmm. and bring that to just my regular worldview on everything else too. Yeah. So I think there's fundamentals of what we do in extension that need to remain. We're service oriented. We're not a for-profit deal. Right. We're fundamental is that we're county based. We're grassroots, like you used that term, and a lot of our partners that we partner really closely with, Farm Bureau Federation, they're mm-hmm. grassroots. Tennessee Farmers Co-op, they're grassroots. Yep. So I think that's something that we need to hold true to. But still be able to layer on these other technologies. And it might, extension is going to look different than when I started doing it. It's going to look different definitely from the folks that I learned it from. And throughout your career, it's going to look different by the time you get closer to retirement.
It looks different 5 years in.
Exactly, yeah. And we need to embrace that technology change, I guess, the way we deliver our information.
Right.
But I think we can do that without – we don't have to throw the baby out with bathwater, right? We can stay true to our fundamental principles of being responsive to the people that need our information, but we can deliver that in different ways that meet their needs better as those technologies come along. So that's kind of one part of the answer of what I think extension looks like whenever I'm, as I'm working with it. on a statewide perspective. The other thing, if you go back 20 years, there was, and again, this goes back to the relationship that we have in the counties. And I want to preface this, I guess, by saying that, we have awesome folks in Extension throughout all components of what we do. And one of the reasons they're so awesome is because, honestly, and just to say it straight out, we don't pay them what they're worth.
Amen.
Yeah. I'm not lobbying for him. I'm not running for any office or anything. I'm just calling it what it is because it worries me. I think we're getting behind the labor market. There's always been a component. I mean, everybody knows. I'll just say it straight out instead of stammering around it. And, everybody knows that you're not going to get rich working for Extension, right?
No.
But the thing, there's part of why we do it is because it's a calling. It's part of what we want to do with our lives, right?
It's a lot like, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a very similar parallel to teaching.
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
think. It's a very similar parallel.
Absolutely. Maybe, functionally very different in the way we deliver education, but we're educators, and that's a service job, and you kind of have to be geared for it as a human, and a lot of people aren't. And I think it's just important to have people in business and sales and all those other things. They have a very important function, but we also have to have people that are service minded. Yeah. But so that there's a value, a non-pecuniary, a non-monetary value to that desire to be in a career that's service oriented. There's a break even to that, though.
Yes, there
when
is.
we get below that break even, we start to lose really good people.
Right.
And I'm concerned about with our starting salaries. And of course, we have to address compression as we do that because we don't want to lose a lot of mid-career folks too if we, as we do this. But we're so far behind, on value on starting salaries that we have to address that. So as you do that, we continue to build the kind of professionals that we're looking for that are very responsive to the folks we serve. And when I say that, agents to the producers in their counties, specialists to the agents, that we have to know who our clientele, our stakeholders are, and be very responsive to them. There's some, I do like this concept of division of labor. We have these three arms of the land-grant universities, and for us in the Institute of Agriculture at the University of Tennessee, that's the Herbert College of Agriculture, UT Agri-Research, and UT Extension. We work extremely well together, have good relationships with the other deans, and then College of Veterinary Medicine is the fourth component of the Institute of Agriculture. All four of us work extremely well together. We enjoy each other.
I would say hand in hand, to be honest with you.
And it has to work that way. But there also is that they're called different things because they're different jobs, right?
Yeah.
I think there's been some tendency for our extension specialists we put more demand on them for research productivity and grantsmanship than I think is warranted, and it takes away from the service deal. So I want to get back to where we're all very responsive to the people that we're responsible to. So again, agents to producers or youth or families, specialists to those agents, and then me and administration to each of those levels to specialists and agents. And if we get back to that and we're able to pay people what their time is worth, then we'll continue to be able to adopt those new technologies and still keep that fundamental principle of serving people in every community across the state.
Yeah. I think you mentioned, not to get too spiritual, but my pastor at church just a couple weeks ago made the comment about, there's a lot of places out there that are updating technology, and it's kind of ironic. He's told the story about, this was in 2018, one of the staff members said, hey, we've got this opportunity to purchase video recording equipment. Don't really know why we need it, but I feel like this is where we're going to be going. And then 18 months later, COVID happened. And he told the story that there were other organizations that were willing to pay up to 5 times what they paid for it. 18 months later, because they had no other option. And so, and I think you sent out an email a couple of weeks ago regarding that. Our goal and our mission is always going to be the same, but it's just a different way of possibly doing things in the future.
Right.
Because my generation, Maddie's generation, are very much more geared towards that digital type platform in a way. But it's funny, I still get a lot of people. There's no replacement for hands-on learning,
Absolutely.
like a field day or coming to a master beef class or whatever it might be. There's nothing that replaces that. And I still get an overwhelming amount of people. The majority is like, oh, I want to come in person, but they also are open to that kind of a hybrid type model.
Sure.
Now, so
and any of those technologies, again, I don't think they'll ever replace human interaction. I think that's the fear, and why some people are reluctant to embrace those technologies, because they think it's either going to bump them out of a job,
sure,
or it's going to displace that human interaction. But inevitably, and maybe that pendulum swings that way, and we get close to it or something. But if you look at historically, when those technologies come in, and people think it's going to displace human interaction, it doesn't do that, right? It ends up augmenting it.
Right.
So I mentioned earlier about I was around, and it was very early in my career, I'll say, whenever, the inner tube of web nets, as my daughters jokingly call it, came about, and we, folks were afraid, it's going to bump me out of a job in education, information transfer. Well, no, it ends up augmenting it, right? So now that we're talking like that about artificial intelligence, and I always say the words outright, because AI, we've been doing AI for 75 plus years.
I was going to say, which AI are we talking about here?
Exactly. And then there's a new one that we don't like to talk about, avian influenza. That's a whole another booger out there. But so artificial intelligence, folks are kind of worried about it. And there's chatbots that use our information, and when I say our extension, cooperative extension across the U.S., there are different state extension services that feed their information into chatbots that some places use, and we're testing that out. But I don't worry at all that displacing agent position or specialist position. If anything, it'll augment what we do. And I use artificial intelligence to augment and as a time-saving device for me, so that I can do more with more folks. And maybe a better way to illustrate this, I had worked with some agents that had been around for a while that kind of worried about these technologies, and this is specifically when we started talking about doing some online training video, distance delivery of training. And a lot of our agents have been around for a while, were reluctant to do that. Yeah. Got into COVID, and it forced us to do it, right?
Yeah, you had no choice, yeah.
And I had agents, one of them you mentioned by name earlier, came to me afterward and said, I was worried about this. And I respect Ronnie. I love that man to death. He's just such a good human. But, he was somewhat resistant to it, and came back after we'd been using it some to supplement what we do in face-to-face meetings. And he said, this is great. I can use this in a way that, I can get people caught up if they miss things. Yep. I do this kind of hybrid approach. So, for a while we got to where agents were we'd turned them into like event coordinators. Just so many night meetings and so many meetings all the time that I almost felt like you're just a planner, and got away from, going out and doing farm visits and interacting with folks, answering questions, solving problems. He called me, after we'd been into that for a while, and he saw how it helped him be more efficient with the educational delivery component of what we do. He said, "This is great. I've got time to go out and do farm visits.
Yeah, I got my time.
Sit down with people and talk in the office. So it's hard to, but that's what leadership roles are. Is trying to show people that, convince them of that, and a lot of it's just about managing." For lack of a better word, managing what people worry about. Yeah. And this is definitely not my thought. I got it from a leadership thing I listened to when I was driving, probably, or something. But somebody said that people aren't. It's the unknown that bother people, right? It's the unknown.
It's fear of the unknown.
Yeah, fear of the unknown. So, even if you have to tell people you don't know, but tell them that we're staying on top of it, trying to find out that, everything you can do to help kind of alleviate that fear of the unknown is part of what good leadership is. And I'm definitely not perfect to that. There's places I've looked back even past year of doing being interim dean that I could have better communicated things. And we're going through a lot of changes in federal funding, and probably could do a better job of communicating some of the fear of the unknown around that. But luckily, we got assistant deans and regional leadership that help fill that void where
Right.
when one of the others of us miss it, there's somebody to step in or to say, hey, I've got people who are worried out here. We need to tell them something. So,
Right.
I can't even remember where I started on that, Ryan, but I went off on a tangent.
That's good.
But those are some of the things I think about in this
Yeah.
role is just being able to embrace those technologies. And I want us to be the first ones out there teaching people how to use it, not being
Right.
scared of it, not trying to hold back from using it. And
Amen to that.
I think in that email you referenced that's one of the things I said that we can either decide to embrace it and guide how it influences us, or we can try to resist it and be influenced by somebody else guiding it, and so let me say that better. There's a quote I used to use when I was doing cattle production talks, and it's kind of attributed to a Kansas cattleman, but it says, change is inevitable, adaptation and survival are optional.
Ooh, that's good.
Stuff's going to change whether you like it or not,
Yeah.
and you get to decide whether or not you're going to adapt and survive.
Yeah.
But it's your decision, right?
Yeah.
And that's our decision. Things are going to change. No matter what we do, we might want to go back to the way we did extension education in the 80s, but it's probably not going to be the exact
It's
right
not
way
the same
to do
crowd,
it.
not same technology.
Not the same
available.
needs of the people we serve. So.
Yeah. Well, talking about technology, that's really why I kind of wanted to start this podcast, to be honest with you. And I was doing a newsletter, and I logged my hours of how much time it took me to do a really good newsletter, right? And in the amount of time it was taking me to do one newsletter for a monthly, type deal, I could do probably 10 of these.
Yep.
And this is more timeless. People can go back on Spotify or YouTube and find it. And so, I mean, and the drone thing, I guess, for some reason I've been dubbed the drone guy from East Tennessee. So everybody asks me, hey, well, how's your drone stuff doing?
Some of that might be my fault. Somebody asked me a drone question. I don't know. Call Ryan.
Well, it was like an act of Congress to get me a drone, if you remember that.
Yeah,
you just got A&R Dean, I think.
Yeah.
So then you were like, we got to go through all these channels. Like, okay, whatever we got to do.
And try to make it easier as we do it, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
You've already hinted at this a little bit, but can you specifically talk about the importance of the research that our land-grant institutions conduct and how that's relayed down through the county agents to the communities? I think there are some people who understand that, but there's a lot of them out there who have never heard that, but also just if you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. So can you kind of, because you've been in multiple roles, can you kind of explain that and the importance of that and why it's important?
Sure, and I'll explain it. I guess to tell it story-wise, I'll tell it in the way I experienced it as a specialist.
And my follow-up to that is there any projects that you saw through as a specialist from those days that had a direct impact? So tie those in.
Yeah, no, that's great. So so when we say special, maybe we need even back up and get a little bit more granular. I hesitate on doing this because I don't want to get too academic on this stuff. A lot of folks don't care how the sausage is made. But if you're listening to this podcast, you probably do care, so we'll tell you a little bit more. So as a specialist, the way we do it in land-grant universities, so the way it's different from liberal arts schools is we're there for a specific purpose, not just to create new information that we want to create or that something hadn't been answered yet. Even if it's very basic science that has to go through 20 years of different iterations before it can get to application, there should be a kernel of we're doing this for a reason to answer a question that helps people, right? And so that's what land grants are. And I mentioned earlier the teaching, research, and extension components of that. So the question about our agri-research unit and then our extension unit funded federally by two very distinct lines, and we have to keep those separate. We're audited on this, and it's mandatory that we keep those separate. And we do that, but we work so seamlessly together that Barry Sims, a really good friend of mine, ran the Highland Rim Research and Education Center.
Yeah,
he's just a good man. He just retired, kind of going through the process of retiring very soon, if not already last week maybe. Just a great guy. Really enjoyed working with him. I heard him say at one of our field days, he's like, it doesn't matter if you know all this details about this is extension or this is ag research. We're the University of Tennessee. If you got a question, we want to answer it. If you do know the details of how it got to you, that's cool. But as long as you get what you need, But again, just so that people do want to know, and I think that's important and love it for people to get into the weeds with us and know how we operate. So kind of getting back to what I was saying originally, as a specialist, I was faculty in the animal science department. Mm-hmm. But my faculty role, when most people hear that, they say, "Oh, well, you teach." They think you teach undergraduate and graduate classes in animal science. I guest lectured, but the only courses that I was instructor of record on were graduate courses, and they were specifically extension experiences. So, let me get back to clearing this up. I'm muddying the water even more. So, faculty in animal science, but I didn't have a teaching appointment.
Right.
I didn't have a research appointment. Now, I actually started out the first few years I worked for the University of Tennessee. I had 25% research, 75% extension. Clyde Lane, probably remember Dr. Lane, retired from Jackson, specialist there, and that we needed to move me to 100% extension to help fill the role he had left. So even though I went from being funded partially by those federal capacity dollars from the Hatch Act over to being funded 100% by Smith Lever, the extension component, I still did research on the research stations with the station research and education center directors. So we're funded differently federally, and we have to maintain that differently in our system. That's why we have the Herbert College of Agriculture, UT Ag Research, UT Extension, and College of Veterinary Medicine, separately named, separately staffed, some joint appointments. But even though we have that all separate in the university, we're all doing the same thing. Eventually, we're trying to answer questions that don't have answers to them yet.
Right.
So maybe I keep getting on these different little tangents and rabbit trails, but to answer the original question, the way we all work together, and that information goes both ways. That if I had a question about, let's give a real example here about a specific estrus synchronization protocol that had just come out from another land grant university, and producers here wanted to know whether it would work in our environment, whether it would work on fescue, whether it would work with the genetics of cattle we have, does it work with ear influence cattle, does it work as good with heifers as it does cows. Still had all those questions out there about it. So I was hearing that from the producers work with through the agents. So I said, okay, let's do some research with that. So talked to the research and education center directors, talked to my other colleagues in animal science that have research appointments. They all wanted to answer that question too. So even though I was extension, I led the charge on doing that field research. Sometimes we call it translational research or applied research. You'll hear all these terms for it. So we got the need from the producer to the agent, from the agent to the specialist. Specialists might do the translational research or work with research faculty to answer it if it's it needs a little more basic research done on it. And the research and education center directors, and then that flow goes back out after we answer that question. Said, yeah, it's really great to use on cows, especially with embryo transfer. Does a really good job on timed artificial insemination. Then we go back out and tell the agents about it. Agents would do some field demos in their counties. And again, that's another fundamental part of the way we educate in extension is to do it and show it in the community. And with the nuances that maybe have to be changed a little bit to apply it in different areas. But usually when people see their neighbor do it, they're going to be more comfortable with doing it themselves, right? That goes back to even before extension. And
I was going to say,
yeah. He did that with some cotton stuff in Texas, and we know that that's the way it works. So that, again, we get the question from the end user, and let's talk about A&R in this case, and specifically the way I operated as an extension specialist in animal science. I was always in contact with agents. Agents would tell me what they're hearing from their producers in their counties, and if I hear it a lot, I say, okay, well, we need to answer that question. So I go find and see if that has already been answered. If it hadn't, I'd work with people that are closest to that answer, take their research and take it to the next step, working with other research faculty, answer that question, and then back through the same route teach agents about it, agents teach producers about it.
Yeah. And I don't think people really understand how much time, effort, and, well, you can talk about money all you want to, but how much money, like, we spend. And I beg and plead people as an agent, don't spend your own money on that. Let UT figure it out first.
Yeah, that's literally why we're here.
That's our job.
As an institution in our country, they said, before we went through the industrial age, as we're coming out of the Civil War, they said, okay, we need to figure out how to make our own food and how to support our own self with the industry.
Yeah.
The food part of it, they set up land-grant universities. And then through those iterations I already mentioned, they said, hey, individuals don't really have the capacity to answer these questions the way we need them answered. So it seems like a logical place for public funding, a responsible place for public funding. We could argue all day where that stops and starts, and maybe that's not as black and white as we think it is. But going back to that idea of holding two concepts in your head at the same time, it can be, I think, useful in some areas. In this regard, it's proven itself to be. Right. That again, for 100+ years now, we've had that, and it's still functional to answer questions. Maybe a better way to say it, a good friend of mine's an ag economist. He and I work together at Mississippi State, and he's now director of extension in Arkansas. They don't title that dean. He's vice president of their system for extension. But he's extension director. He's an ag economist. I remember him saying that when you have a dispersed system or disparate system where the actors in that system can't respond as quickly to market signals, maybe there's some time that's the responsible place for cumulative action on that. Yeah. And that's kind of where we feel that, to pull this back into the scenario here of beef cattle production, our average herd size 25 or 30. I think from our data in-house, we'd say average herd size probably 50 across the state of folks that are real serious about making money with it. Yeah. If you've got 50 cows, you can't feasibly do that research and answer those questions yourself, right? Right. But, okay, I actually remember now what got me down this rabbit trail. But if that person comes to me with that question, I can say, well, you don't have to make that mistake yourself. That's why we're here. Yeah. That's why you help support us. Let us do that for you. Let us do that for you. We'll get you the information. And a lot of times that information's already out there. We can pull it from a different place, tweak it to their situation. Again, that's, with our training in different areas, that's why we're here. And hopefully when that person tries it, sometimes, it doesn't work exactly right, and we figure out why not and fix that. But most of the time, it works well. They didn't have to make that mistake and risk their entire livelihood from that. Right.
Well, Maddie can attest to this too. Of course, I'm an agronomist by training. Got my master's at UT in plant science and agronomy concentration. But, we do a lot of forage demos here in the county. I think by far, I have to go back and look at the data, but by far and large, forage crops are the number one crop here in Jefferson County, which I would say that's probably true for a lot of the entire state of Tennessee. Definitely. So we put a lot of focus on forage crops and, introducing maybe some new things, whether it be rotational grazing or, trying different varieties of forages, things like that. And the best example that I could give is one of our demos, again, with weather, everything we had going on this year, we weren't able to get a demo out, not necessarily late, but it wasn't optimal timing, I'll say that. Still within that planting date range. However, we got 2.5 weeks of really hot and dry weather after that. And I would rather do a demo with a producer and let me, foot that bill a little bit with some, fee-based programming money and stuff like that, because we've never had this type of variety of grass grown in Jefferson County, to my knowledge. Number one, will it work here? Number two, how do we manage it properly? Number three, what are some things that I tell people, we get questions a lot of times on what not to do. Yeah. We answer those questions more so than what to do, which ultimately ends you up in that across the finish line of what to do successfully to accomplish that goal. And so I have that conversation with people every day about, hey, if I get enough people together, let's try that, and we'll see how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the role. A lot of those things are answered, but they might not be answered on a micro level,
right?
Specifically for Jefferson County. And again, that's why we're here in a county-based deal. It's going to be different in Jefferson County, Tennessee, than it is in Lauderdale County, Tennessee, right?
Very different.
Yes, very different.
Very different.
And again, going back to when I was a specialist, I did some trials working with plant science folks on forage cattle interaction stuff, and so we had our Ames Research and Education Center in Southwest Tennessee, and Springfield, and then Greenville. Three very, very different
very
areas.
Different places.
And Bermuda grass, a seeded variety, Bermuda grass is not going to do anything in Greenville, right? You're going to get winter kill every time. And so we could use different things and tailor it to different needs of those microenvironments across the state. And it's really a custom designed, way to answer questions that people aren't able. They're market players that can't respond that nimbly or that quickly, don't have the capacity to do it themselves.
Right. You talked about some of our industry partners that support us heavily. You mentioned the co-op earlier. And there's a lot of support from folks like that. You know, because obviously there's a monetary thing with selling products and that nature there, but they're huge supporters of what we do. Yeah. Because, like you said, just like Jefferson County is different than Lauderdale County, the co-ops there are also very, very different. Totally different lines of products, totally different climates, soil types, everything like that. So it's very good to have that buy-in from all aspects as well. And,
with that cooperative structure, and I think the reason that we've been such good partners with them, or they've been good partners to us for such a long time, they're not explicitly for profit. They have to have revenue from product sales and those kinds of things. But really what drives that is making sure they have the right products and right information for the people that they're supporting. So it's
the easy partnership right there.
Yeah, definitely. And from grassroots, again, kind of an approach. A lot of that stuff stemmed out of seeing the extension model work so well.
Right.
A lot of cooperative structures or policy type structures, organizations developed themselves on the model of cooperative extension, the way it was done originally.
Yeah, amen to that. We're going to take a quick break here, and then we've got probably the biggest question for you out of the whole podcast, and we're going to do some rapid-fire beef cattle questions for you at the very end.
That sounds great.
All right, we'll be right back. What's up, everybody? If you haven't already, take a second to give us a like, subscribe, and share the show. You can find more episodes of our latest content on YouTube and Spotify. We appreciate you tuning in. Now, let's get back to the episode. And we're back, folks. We got a couple more questions for Doc before we let him go and get on with the rest of his day. But I want to ask this question. In your opinion, what do you see as the biggest threat to agriculture in the state of Tennessee over the next decade or so?
Yeah, over the next 10 years, to put it in one word, would be houses.
Yeah, amen.
Just to be real direct about it, and that's something we work a lot on. And we support a lot of other groups that are trying to make policy decisions on this, which is really tricky to do, right? I mean, our entire history as a country is based on property rights. Yeah, I mean, it's what's I think made us so solid is the fact that we have very, very solid property rights, and it's hard to do anything about that, without interfering on folks' property rights. But anyway, there are policy people that. We're definitely outside of the policy realm. We're apolitical in extension, but we support those folks that try to make those decisions with data. Right. So our Ag and Resource Economics group has done a lot of work on farmland loss. We're doing a lot of educational development work on legacy planning, on making the right decisions on how to pass that land down to the next generation. Without losing much, and we've had some things change with property inheritance tax laws and property tax laws. Things are constantly changing on that, and it's different between states. And that's kind of the give and take of what these states have to decide on policy is how it influences or incentivizes or disincentivizes development, and what's enough and what's not, what's too much. And you have to think about jobs and non-agriculture industries and support. So a lot of things that go into that. But, I mean, just to be very direct about the answer, and this is in the most apolitical way that we can say it, but it's farmland loss. And with that comes the value of land. Yes. So, as a specialist, I would have I would have hoped in about mid-career I would have been able to get to a spot where I could do a little farming myself, either buy some ground or rent some ground, and was very interested in doing that. By the time I got to that point, the land values had gotten way beyond what I could do on a public job. So, it's unfortunate for me. I'm not crying over it because people are in a lot worse situations, but because whenever you have that much pressure, if let's say you're a fifth-generation farmer in Tennessee, and all of a sudden your land went from worth $3,000 20 years ago to $30,000 today, that's a totally different kind of pressure. I mean, it's
very
psychological pressure. It's existential, I guess. When it comes down to it, and I think that's actually why we have. And a lot of people don't talk about this, but there are mental health issues in farming, right? But when you think about that, if I was a fifth generation, and I'm staring down the barrel of maybe losing my family's farm after 5 generations, or going back before the state of Tennessee, and how do I navigate that? There's so many influences. Maybe you got family influences that haven't been as tied to the agricultural operation that see those dollar signs, and there's so much with it. I really think that's right now the biggest threat to agriculture in the state.
And specifically here in Jefferson County, that's kind of become one of my big pushes. Is we're doing another farmland legacy this fall, and so trying to do one of those every other year, recruiting because you as an agent, you deal with all the farms that hey, they've got kids that are interested, or hey, they have kids that aren't interested, and there's always that question, and then you get into the easements, and a lot of times people just don't understand what options you have available.
Right.
And that's where we come in to bring the educational delivery type of information of, hey, if you have kids, you've got these specific questions. If you don't have kids, you've got these potential options. If you have kids but none of them are interested in farming, hey, then that's a totally different can of worms. So, which we've had people from all walks and all backgrounds go through that course with us, but they always come out on the other side thinking, and they've always thanked me, thank you for that, because I didn't know that was even an option or even a thing.
And maybe that's a great way to go back and illustrate why we're here.
Yeah.
What the Cooperative Extension Service does. We try to get answers to folks that don't have the capacity to find that out themselves, either to find the information or to create the information themselves. So, brag a little bit on our Ag and Resource Economics group. We have a stellar Ag Econ group in UT Institute of Agriculture. Great teaching component, great research component, amazing extension specialist in that department. And so, they've done a lot of risk management in agronomy or in grain production and marketing, livestock, and we've done this for years, right? Because that's the need. Producers want some assistance in making decisions on marketing or price input management, those kinds of things. But now we've shifted over, and we hear from our agents who are working with our landowners and producers in their counties saying, hey, these guys have a totally different guys and gals have a totally different set of issues that they're facing. We need to get them information on this. So the farmland legacy comes along. Well, it's even more of an issue now, so we need to bolster that. So I would say our Center for Profitable Ag has worked with our Institute for Public Service, a totally different organization in the University of Tennessee system, but they serve counties too, and mostly through the county governments. But we're all trying to work together and with Ag and Resource Economics so that AREC is going to hire a ag law specialist. So,
yes, I remember that being discussed. Yeah,
specifically to answer some more of those questions and develop more of that kind of education. So we have, I think, what's a great farmland legacy program, but we need more, and we have different.
We got to take it to the next level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they're going to do that again. Center for Profitable Ag's hiring specialists to say, okay, we need to make more with what land we have, and what I mean by that, it's not necessarily just more product, but more revenue, right? As that land value goes up to justify having it in agriculture, we need to.
Similar to starting salaries, you got to keep up. I mean, that's reality.
Yeah. And so we're addressing it from that part, but the other is, a non-production type deal, but we still, again, from AREC component to when we get that ag law specialist in, that they'll work directly with producers on answering questions, tax law, specifically around land transition.
We get those questions all the time. Yeah.
But then the other thing too, and a lot of our specialists work directly with the industry too, and so this person would be able to do in-services for lawyers to say, hey, if you're an estate attorney and you deal with a lot of ag producers or farmers in your area, this is the new kind of policy you need to think about, or this is the way this policy changes the way you might have done it in the past. So it's serving the industry and serving the stakeholder, but it's all ultimately serving the landowner, family, youth. Sometimes we do that through supporting industry to give them a better product.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I forgot we have an ag law specialist that'll be coming on board at some point in time in the future.
Right. The position's there. They're
getting it all worked out.
Hired yet.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we're going to wrap up with some rapid-fire beef cattle questions.
Outstanding.
I figured I know our audience is definitely livestock heavy here in Jeff County, and I know that's an easy ones for you to answer.
So I got to tell you a joke a little bit though. Jason Smith, who used to be a nutrition specialist here, Katie Mason, who's our nutrition specialist now, she gives me a hard time. They all say that repro guys are animal scientists that can't do math.
Oh boy!
So if you ask me, and I own that, definitely, I was more into studying, biochemistry or endocrinology or something, just so I didn't have to do math with letters in it, as I tell the econ guys. So if you ask me a nutrition question, I can tell you right now the answer is going to be 5 pounds of soy hulls a day. That's always my nutrition.
That's
answer. 5 pounds of soy hull pellets and ask a nutritionist.
That's exactly right. All right, that's funny. Well, Miss Maddie, do you want to do the honors and ask these, or you want me to?
Doesn't matter, whatever you want to do. Really, I'm going whatever.
Okay, well, you should me go ahead and ask them then.
That's fine.
Okay.
Cool.
She's a little shy about getting on.
That's all right. She doesn't want to be the one that stumps the.
That's exactly yeah. All right, so here we go. Very quickly, what are your thoughts on the cattle market right now?
It's high.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
If you had to start a brand new,
say too, it's high. Use LRP. There's different.
Amen. Yes, the higher it goes, you need to talk to our specialists about using LRP and make sure you get the right product for you. If you had to start a brand new herd, which breed or breeds are you using as a commercial producer?
Oh man, you trying to pin me in a corner? I have some.
No.
I would. It's a personal preference. I like commercial cattle production.
Yeah.
Love what purebred producers do. It's kind of not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
The studying pedigrees. That some people love that.
Yeah.
I really geek out on how to use those genetics in commercial herds.
Right.
Maybe a little bit of a controversial statement, but I mean, preface by saying this: any other food production.
Mm-hmm.
relies on heterosis, the science heterosis, the whole, Norman Borlaug and the Green Revolution, saving lives, got Nobel Prize for it.
Yeah.
It's based on heterosis. We haven't used that in the cattle industry to its full extent.
Yeah.
I very much believe in an F1 cow bred to a third breed. I'm not going to tell you which breeds, though, because the purebred guys will get mad at me.
Fair enough. It's a very democratic and scientific answer.
and all food production is about reproduction. And
right.
Reproduction is lowly heritable as a selection trait, so that means it's highly affected by heterosis. I mean, it's so easy to breed F1 cows. It make a repro guy look like they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I like that answer. Favorite steak, ribeye or filet?
Ribeye, 100%.
Amen. Medium rare, or rare?
Medium.
Okay. All right. I figured
if I'm cooking it out, it'll be a little bit more on the rare side. If I'm telling somebody else to cook it, and
who knows what they're doing?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. On that same vein, what's your favorite steakhouse or favorite place to go get a steak?
Yeah. So my wife kind of gets aggravated with me because I just don't go to a lot of places to buy a steak, I guess. I end up at a lot of meetings where we'll grill steaks. I eat way more steak probably than a lot of people.
Perks of the job,
absolutely,
folks.
Not complaining about it at all. So I'm trying to remember this place in Knoxville that me and my wife's family went to.
What part of town is it in?
Hey, man, I'm bad about that, too. Rachel, again, she fusses at me because I don't know anything about our hometown in Columbia. So
much less Knoxville.
But I can drive you to some, kind of obscure place in Lauderdale or Lake County.
Yeah.
But I don't know as much about our hometown. But, so it was Turkey Creek, actually, outside.
Connor's Steak and Seafood.
I'm pretty sure that was it. Connor's, yes, that's it. That's a good steak now.
Hey, that you can ask Maddie. I told her and her fiance, like, if y'all want a good steak, where do you go?
Go to Connors.
Go to Connor's Steak and Seafood. The best, not supposed to be advertising, I guess, but best pound for pound ribeye you can get on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
I mean, it's by far and large, that's the best place I can recommend somebody go.
They sure did it right.
So
yeah.
nothing against Ruth's Chris or Lonesome Dove or anywhere like that, but hey, Connor's is hard to beat.
That's right.
Hard to beat. Would you rather check cows on horseback or side by side?
I'm not the best horseman in the world, but I enjoy riding a horse, and I think it's good for the cattle. But it's whatever works,
Not everybody's KT, right? Not everybody can be
Exactly.
Kevin Thompson.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Lordy. Would you rather have a super fertile cow that's mean or a sweet and gentle one that's hit or miss?
Oh man, that is a really good question.
That's also pinning you in a corner.
Call that a conundrum.
Yeah.
Because if they weren't asked together, can I say neither?
As a repro, yes, you can. Yeah, absolutely.
By a goat? No.
Chance of getting multiples. That's right. That's right.
No, that's a good question. There's a lot behind that. I can't stand a mean cow.
Yeah.
I just absolutely can't stand a mean cow, and it affects production. But why would you have one that stays open? That's just a pet.
You need to get rid of both of them is what I tell people.
Yeah.
Life's too short to deal with crazy cattle. That's what I tell
Sell
our guys
hay.
all the time.
If you can't figure out how to get a calm cow that makes a calf every year and weans half her body weight, then just sell hay.
Yep, amen to that. Would you rather bottle feed 5 calves every day or pull a calf once a week?
So I've done both of those. Growing
God
up,
bless
I
you.
used to. That's a funny. There's so many neat ways to go with these questions. When I was in high school, we raised bottle calves. There was a lot of dairies.
Yeah, a lot
around
of dairy
us,
steers. Yeah.
and they were. I think at the time I was paying like $20 a round for them.
Yeah.
And now they're $1,800. Some of these beef on dairy calves. It's crazy. I mean, absolutely crazy the way that market's gone. I didn't particularly care. I was a high school student, so I was doing 8,000 other things, and need to get home, feed calves, and get up early and do them before school. Didn't mind it too much. The other one was pull a calf a week. I kind of got a little bit of a knack for pulling calves. I'd rather pull a calf a week than have to feed 5 bottle calves a day.
Yeah, I got you. Would you rather check cattle in the early morning or late in the evening?
Well, early morning, just to get it
Get
done.
up and get it over with. Yeah.
But I love sunsets though, and checking cattle. If you're out in the pasture, listening to cattle tear grass with their tongue, and especially if you're at the foothills of Smoky Mountains, in a really well maintained pasture, and you're listening to that and watching the sun go down in the fall of the year over some real vibrantly colored leaves, there's nothing better in the world than that.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Last question. What's the largest cattle farm or ranch you've been on in the U.S.?
Jorgensen Landing Cattle in South Dakota.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Biggest bull seller, I think, in the country.
Yeah.
Really interesting way they market bulls, too. Been kind of on Deseret, never toured Deseret in Florida. I think it's still biggest by land mass in the contiguous U.S.
Gotcha.
I've never been to Hawaii, or as we would have said growing up, Hawaii. I've never been there, but Parker Ranch, I think, at one time was the biggest in the U.S. Not on the continent, but so definitely Jorgensen Landing Cattle. Matter of fact, plug for Jefferson County. Their director of research and development, genetic selection and stuff, lives here in Dandridge.
Yes, I know. He and I have talked.
Dave Thomas, good friend of mine, just a super good guy. Graduate of the University of Tennessee, worked in the industry for in animal health for a lot of years. Retired, but he's Jorgensen Landing Cattle's research and development guy. Lives right here in Dandridge.
Yeah, he called me and he dropped. I wasn't in that day. He dropped by, but he dropped some business cards for me. And,
You need to connect with Dave.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
All right, Doc. Anything else you got?
No, just thanks for having me. It's good,
Anytime,
good
man.
to be back in Jefferson County, and
Gives you an excuse to get off campus, right?
that's right. And I think I've got a little bit of time. I may ride through Duncan Valley, just kind of see the old place. And,
Good.
Yeah, and go see some sights for a second before I head back to Knoxville.
Go do that. Well, thank you for joining us. We greatly appreciate you. Appreciate your leadership for our organization.
Thank you.
Selfishly, I was telling Maddie before we got on here, I hated to see you take the leap into administration because I always loved you as a specialist. But it's I'm glad you're at the helm and where we're at now. So
Thank you. I
very
wouldn't want to
thankful
do
for
it with anybody else or any other group, so y'all make it easier than it otherwise could be, and I appreciate you a bunch.
Yeah, we try to.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. We appreciate Doc and his time, and we will see you guys back next time here on Between the Fence Posts. See y'all.